Hi, this is Josh Braun back with another piece of listener mail, or responding to another piece of listener mail. This is another listener voicemail. You can leave us listener voicemail by calling 559-851-5433. And this is a response to a recent Trent Horn episode talking about personhood. This was the philosophy to the rescue episode. And this is what the caller has to say about it.
Hi. I just listened to Trent Horn give a very, it seems like he thought it out a long time, but I found it troubling that he would say personhood is defined because you change. All your cells and everything changes from your birth, not like a car. Well, a bird changes. And the baby bird gets new parts in the adult bird, and so does a plant. So he never said anything to back that up. He just said, that makes you a person. Well, plants can do that. Animals can do that. So he wasn't very specific. Just the point. Thank you.
Okay. I think this is a case, well, I'm not going to say I think. This one I just know. This is a case of you not understanding exactly what Trent said, because that's not what Trent said. What Trent says was a little more complex, or a lot more complex than that. And I don't blame you. I have to listen to things Trent says over and over before I get them. So this is not, no one's making fun of anybody here. But I do think it's a really important point, because you're right. If Trent had basically said that a person is somebody whose parts change, that would be a very it would be a very easily refuted argument, to be sure, because, yeah, you're right. Just about every living organism has parts that change. So obviously that's not what makes you a person. So I agree with you there. So what I'm just going to do is start by just playing back just a little bit of audio where Trent's talking about this. And this is where what I think the section that you misheard, because he does talk about changing parts. But I'm just going to replay what Trent said. I'm going to put the text on the screen because people like me that are visual learners, that'll be a lot more helpful than just playing the audio or even just the video back of Trent sitting here talking about it, and then I'll just make a couple of comments. What is a person?
A person, I like the definition that the philosopher Boethius used. I believe he lived in the 6th century, but Boethius said that a person was an individual substance that had a rational nature. So a substance is something that maintains its identity through change, not like an object. If you take 90% of a car and put in new parts, it's not the same car anymore. Right. You wouldn't like it if I did that to your car. Right. Especially if I replaced it with inferior parts.
Yeah, I was going to say, my car would probably be an improvement.
Probably. But think about all of us, that we have 90% new parts from when we were infants.
Right.
All of our body parts are different, but we would say that if you look at a picture of us as an infant, I would say, oh, that's me. It's the same person. Right. So a substance maintains identity through change, and a rational substance still maintains the value and identity of a rational being. So an infant is a rational animal, even though an infant can't function rationally. It has a natural capacity for that. So a person is just an individual with a rational nature.
Okay, so you can see what Trent said is different. Trent didn't say that a person is anything whose cells change or body parts change, or that a person is any substance that maintains identity through change. What he said was that a person is an individual, so a substance who maintains identity through change with a rational nature. And that's the last part where, birds and plants aren't rational creatures. Or at least I don't buy the arguments that they are. So I don't think there's a problem. A person's an individual who maintains identity through change with a rational nature. So I'm not going to do a treatise like that goes more into that, but I'm going to recommend a couple of books. If you want to get more into this, because understanding the substance view of persons is definitely, this is about as highly philosophical as it's valuable to get as a pro-life. Well, no, that's not what I want to say. When you're talking about abortion, being able to explain the substance view of persons is going to be very helpful, because sometimes you have those long conversations where you kind of start going to what Trent called that metaphysical basement. And this definitely has to do with why we think, most pro-life people, I think, would agree with the substance view. There are other arguments. There's the Don Marquis future like ours argument. We're actually going to talk more about that in a future Life Report episode. But most of the pro-life authors use the substance or agree with the substance view of persons. So here's his 2 recommendations. Frank Beckwith's book, Defending Life, would be this would be if you want to understand a bit more about the substance view of persons. It's not like Beckwith goes into a lot of detail on it. It's definitely where he's coming from, and so you can definitely you can read more about it, and I think he explains it very well. But if you really want to get advanced, this is the granddaddy of them all. This is Philosophical Foundations for a Christian Worldview by J.P. Moreland and William Lane Craig. This is a tough read, but they have several lengthy chapters explaining what is a substance, what is identity, explaining the difference between objects and people, and it's very, very helpful. Although it's one of those books where unless you're really, really, really bright, and I'm not. You kind of got to read each paragraph, a few times before you really get it, or maybe read a whole chapter a few times before you can actually say these ideas back to somebody else. But that would be if you really want to understand what our view is. That goes a lot more into depth. I agree with you. Like Trent could have spent way more time talking about substance view. He didn't. He basically said this is the view. And maybe he didn't. Maybe could have spent more time on it. But we had a lot of other things we were trying to cover on that show. But if you really want to learn more about I would say this is Trent's view. This is my view. If you want to understand it, there's obviously a lot more that can be said about that. And so, Philosophical Foundations for a Christian Worldview by J.P. Moreland and William Lane Craig is definitely your best bet for that. Thanks a lot for listening, and if you have any more questions, feel free you can email us at josh@prolifepodcast.net. If you don't want to email, you can go through prolifepodcast.net, click on About Us, and there's a contact form right there on the right side. Or you can leave us a listener voicemail. Once again, that number is 559-851-5433. Thanks a lot.